Well, hello there. Do you like to play melee DPS? Because I do, and I've played all of the melees in 11.1 on the PTR to test them out to see how fun they are with the tier sets, with some of the talent reworks, and to tell you exactly which one ranks the highest and which one the lowest. And we're gonna start with arms, which could be the lowest, but maybe not as much. Okay, I know people like to play arms, and it's fine in terms of gameplay. I just always feel when I play arms that something's missing. It's not really the arms that I always fell in love with. I don't really like this new arms direction, and if people like it, I guess that's okay. It's just a little bit disappointing to me because it's been one of the specs that I've been enjoying for, I don't know, 20 years of World of Warcraft. But I digress. I've played mostly Colossus, and to be fair, Demolish is kind of cranking right now, and it is very satisfying to see that last hit just fucking delete mobs. And spamming cleaves for big damage is pretty fun as well. Although I just don't get the sweeping strikes focus, and I don't really see Avatar being an interesting cooldown anymore, and it's been a staple of Warrior for a very long time. I will put arms in Need Some Love. I would have put it into No Way, but I'm coming around to it a little bit. It's not that bad, and I know a lot of people still enjoy it. Having fun is very important, especially when you want to learn backend web development with today's sponsor, Boot.dev, since they believe the biggest problem with online learning in any field is boredom, and they approach this in a very interesting way. You may not know, but I used to study programming in C++ and C#, old school style, and it never really clicked with me. But when Boot.dev approached us, I have tried their platform, and dude, while you learn everything from the basics to advanced stuff about Python and Go as programming languages, you are actually in a video game. Lessons provide XP points at the end. Your account levels up. I am level 11 or 12 as of writing this, and you can pick up quests and earn achievements and participate in boss battle, all by writing a ton of code, because just like WoW, in order to get better, you just need to code and code again. I can dig that. There are actually so many lessons you can go into depending on your level of expertise. And while you are doing it, you have access to a bunch of tools that can help you learn and get better along the way. You can join the Boot.dev Discord community and talk with other people in the field if you want the solutions quicker. The platform also has Boots, an AI-powered bear wizard, which could be the next hero talents for Guardian Druid, I'm just saying. But Boots can help you with answers or, whenever a problem gets too tough. You can also forsake your XP points and ask for a solution to the code you need to write, which in the end is what really matters, since learning is the most important thing. Every gamer at one point has dreamed about making their own game, being a part of games in general, and being a programmer, which, as a career choice, you might already know that it's pretty lucrative. Stack Overflow keeps track of a bunch of data, one of which is the median salaries, which for backend devs was over $160,000 in 2023 in the US alone. The platform is free to read and watch in guest mode, and if you decide to get the subscription for it, you can use our code Marcelian Online and get 25% off of your first purchase. You would be supporting your boys here and also gain access to all the interactive features like the game elements that I told you about, the AI assistants, progress tracking, and of course hands-on coding. You can also click the link in the description and our promo coupon will apply the 25% discount automatically on your first purchase, be it a 1 month or a 1 year subscription. Thanks Boot.dev for sponsoring our video, which is so nice to talk about the future, which is not Assassination for me. I gotta be honest, it's not a bad spec, and I am a fan of Rogue, of course, but something about Rogue, kind of like Warrior as well, hasn't really pulled me as a fan in the War Within, probably the lack of changes. Now, I'm not oblivious to Assassination being one of the best melee DPS specs in the game, and I'm actually really happy that it's been doing so well in this patch, and I'm only hoping that it continues doing so as well, because it has certain aspects of its place, I'm gonna put it kind of like in the middle there, that I would love to see in specs like Feral, and we'll get to Feral as well, where you can actually choose to do big AoE bursts or funnel damage into one target with caustic spatter, which I think work really well into giving assassination options and fun in AoE. AoE especially, since I mostly do Mythic Plus on my ults, but raids are also really great as well. Now, Until that changes, I will stay a little bit on the fence with Rogue, and I'm still kind of missing playing a little bit, so I'll probably play it a little bit, but maybe not as much as other specs on the list. Outlaw is in a similar situation. I kind of really miss pirating around, and to be fair with the Plunderstorm, I'm kind of itching a little bit to be a pirate, yar. And Hidden Opportunity still being a semi-decent valid playstyle is fun, at least in Season 1, but in Season 2, it kind of drops off a little bit, I believe. I mean, that's how the tier set would indicate, since the tier set really buffs this patch, and you would really want Between the Eyes to be buffed a little bit more, so that crack shot builds can just be good whether you play Hidden Opportunity or Keep It Rolling, since Keep It Rolling kind of wants dispatch damage a little bit more. So it feels like the tier set will probably push you into Keep It Rolling a little bit more, which I'm not opposed to. It's a fun build. I just like ambushes way more. I don't know. I'm a simple guy. I'm simple needs. Survival is in an interesting position in 11.1 because Pack Leader has been fully reworked. Survival has been a fun spec across the board for me to play. It's a main contender at this point, and it feels like it needs a little bit more tweaks. It had a couple of talent changes where now Flanking Strike is a choice now with Butchery, and we have 2 new talents that buff single target and kill shots, bleed dots, boss damage, execute damage as well, which is great in theory, but it still feels like Survival plays more or less the same. And most of all, it feels like with Pack Leader, you're kind of overcapping on Wildfire Bomb charges, and this is kind of like the bane of Survival. No matter what rework it goes through, it always feels like you just have way too much stuff, and it's never really clear what you're supposed to be doing or what you're supposed to be spending your globals on, and that's not really intuitive, and it kind of takes a little bit away from the potential of Survival. They have addressed this before in the beta for the War Within, so I'm hoping that they address it again in the next patch. So I'm just going to put Survival in decently fun. It's really fun. Obviously, it's a main contender, but I feel like it's just not giga fun yet. And giga fun is Enhancement, on the other hand, because Enhancement is cooking next patch. A little bit controversial. I am actually a fan of the Primordial Wave change and the fact that you can recast it for more consumers and fat finishers. I do understand that it's taken away the Tempest Cleave, if I'm not mistaken, and that's definitely a game interaction that was really fun to play with, which means that this might push Totemic a little bit more, and I'm not necessarily a fan of not having diversity in my builds, whether it is through hero talents or the actual talents themselves. I do have to say that I've actually enjoyed Totemic really much on the PTR. I've played with the new talent that gives Sundering a 40% chance to reset its own cooldown. Spamming back-to-back Sundering has been really cool, I'm not gonna lie. And having a different approach to your economy of your resources with Totemic feels way better. So with Stormbringer, you kind of not reset your Maelstrom weapons when you use your finishers, and that's cool because you get to use a finisher again. But the way your normal rotation works is you use a, let's say, a Chain Lightning, and then you immediately queue up a Storm Strike to, to kind of keep the flow of the rotation going. And it might be a little bit too late for you to notice that your Maelstrom weapon hasn't been spent, so you end up over-generating Maelstrom weapons that go to waste. With Totemic, however, or at least on the PTR, I don't know if this applies to Stormbringer as well, I play mostly Totemic, the Maelstrom weapon generates progressively over your rotation, so it's not just like fully 10 off the bat, so you have time to react to it and spend it more efficiently. At least that feels really well when you see it happen. And speaking of Feral, well, I spoke about Feral about 4 specs ago. It's missing a little bit some of that assassination damage profile where you used to have tear open wounds. I think I mention this every time I talk about Feral. It feels a little bit boring to still mention it again, but I do have to say that the lack of agency over different types of damage profiles in AoE feels a little bit lackluster. With that out of the way, Feral is one of the most funs I've had in the PTR because baseline Feral just plays really well. There's no really big changes going to the next patch. Some quality of life changes to the class talents in the tree, which is great. Gives me a little bit more options to maybe get an Innervate. That's nice. But Feral still plays the same and it plays really good. It's really fun baseline. The tier set definitely feels like it makes me want to play more Apex Predator, which is my favorite way of playing Feral, and that's great. But to be fair, and I'm guilty, I'm gonna admit it, the thing that I enjoyed the most about Feral was the fact that I was actually doing a lot of damage. And whenever you're playing a very fluid cursive spec that kind of feels like it's doing everything right and has these big moments, but you're not really doing a lot of damage with them, it feels empty. It feels like you're drinking a flavorless soda or something. It's terrible. I'm not saying that it doesn't do damage on life. Obviously it does damage, but it's not the same. On PTR, it's maybe one of the best DPSers in the game that I have personally tested, and that says quite a bit. And I'm hoping that Feral gets to that point, because we've had a red meta, we've had an enhanced meta, and from all of the bucket of these are the worst melee specs in the game, I think Feral needs a shot at the spotlight at one point as well. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's necessarily meta worthy, but it is doing a lot of damage as of this video. Frost DK is maybe one of the exceptions of the melee specs when it comes to its tier set, because the tier set is kind of bland, boring, and annoying for a lot of the melee specs. Maybe you could say the same about Frost Death Knight, but it actually pushes some interesting playstyles. First of all, the tier set has also been reworked. I don't know if you've kept up with the news, where now your 4 set has chances to proc Frost Sights. I think maybe your 2 set also procs Frost Sights. It doesn't really matter, because what's important for the tier set is that it doesn't make you play Frost Sight. You don't need to play that. It's also a very boring and bland ability. They need to fucking buff that sometime this millennium. But what is interesting about Frost tier set is that it buffs Glacial Advance and Frost Strike only consistently through the 2-piece, which means that in order to take advantage of the tier set, you would need to use these abilities as your main consumers, which means that you probably don't want to use your Breath of Sindragosa, since during Breath, your tier set kind of doesn't really exist. First of all, that's baseline terrible design. But it does push a lot more builds out for you to test out, especially since a lot of Frost Death Knights kind of really hate Breath. And to be fair, as good as it is right now in Mythic Plus, Breath is one of the main reasons why it's good, but it's also one of the most annoying spells to play around, because you're actually a diva. Being a diva is not nice, your party's not going to cater to you, your tank is not going to pull around your Breath, so having other options is great, because with this tier set, you might even be able to play two-handed Rider of the Apocalypse. Fancy that. That's like out of left field. Obviously, you're going to be playing Shattered Frost. Maybe you'll play Lonely Winter. Who knows? Who knows? The sky's the limit, and we can test all of them out. And the tier set definitely enables that, which probably signifies a deeper problem with Frost Death Knight, where it's just, it needs a proper rework, not just talent shifted around. It needs maybe a new spell or 2 new spells, different ways to engage with the capstones, because they're all just very passive and very bland. But the potential of having a lot more builds to play with is really enticing, so I will put Frost DK in decently fun. Fury Warrior has been the saving grace of Warrior for me in the War Within, and that still doesn't say much because it's my least favorite Warrior spec. It still plays like a Warrior, and it's kind of like on its last leg. It feels like Fury Warrior is one rework away from just being dog shit like the other 2 Warrior specs in terms of fantasy, gameplay, and playstyle. It is good. I feel like it doesn't really change much. There are some weird interactions with Reckless Abandon. From what I understand, it's kind of buggy at the moment, so I was playing more anger management. Now, those will probably be fixed by the time the patch launches, so it's not really a relevant point to make, but it's the same. It's the same Fury Warrior. I feel like one of the biggest sins that Fury Warrior also received was that the, I think, Titan's Torment capstone of Avatar doesn't give you Odin's Fury anymore. I like that. I liked Avatar proccing some of your bigger abilities. They're taking that away completely from Warrior, and every time they do that, they make it less fun for me. And despite that, it's still average, but it's looking like in the near future, Warrior is a dead class to me. I don't know about you. But on a plus note side, whatever, Havoc has been really interesting and going all the way in front of survival. Now, this has never happened ever, and it didn't really receive very big changes. A couple of talents have been changed. Now, you don't have the any means necessary talent that turns, I think, all of your damage into chaos damage. And Cycle of Hatred has been changed as well. So Cycle of Hatred now makes it so that when you use your I-Beam, it reduces the overall cooldown of I-Beam by, I think, 5 seconds, until from 40-second cooldown, it goes down to 20-second cooldown. If you die, you lose this buff. This has been bugged on PTR and it hasn't really been working. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But bringing I-Beam to a 20-second cooldown can open up some really interesting playstyles, especially with Inertia, which I really like, because that's when Vengeful Retreat, I think Vengeful Retreat has a 20-second cooldown as well, so they would match up really well, and you can have these Inertia big moments of big I-Beam burst damage. That's really fun. And if you don't like that, you can play Exergy, which takes away the momentum playstyle altogether. And if you don't like that, you cannot play any of them and just play totally different talents, going maybe into more Immolation Aura playstyles as well. And you can also go to Eldrazi, which has been very surprisingly the most fun I've had with Havoc, because it gives you options when dealing with AoE. You can do the dance of Chaos Striking first and then Blade Dancing for big Blade Dance and AoE. And if you're on a boss, obviously you do the other way around to activate the, I think it's Thrill of the Hunt or whatever it's called. Blade Dance first and then Chaos Strike for big single target damage. Throwing the Reaver's Glaive around feels really nice. Having the Reaver's Glaive activate with the Hunt is really cool. Using the Hunt and Vengeful Retreat to activate Inertia is really cool. I don't think you play Essence Break with Eldrazi, which would make it a crazy 500 IQ's playstyle. And to be fair, Essence Break is probably one of the most difficult melee playstyles in the game currently, by the way. So Havoc is no longer a meme, but it's been really fun, and it is, I think, a main contender for me at this point, and it hasn't been this way since Legion. Red Paladin has kind of dipped for me a little bit. I don't know exactly where to put it because it hasn't really received any changes, and the more it goes without any actual real changes, the farther behind it falls. When you have enhancement, you have survival, you have Havoc actually getting melee talent upgrades that can elevate the playstyle to the next level, while Red just kind of still stays the same. And maybe out of spite, I will put it into the okay, could play it. Maybe in front of Rogue. No, I'll leave it there. It deserves there because no real changes, and the talents are very cookie cutter. I really don't want to play Executions in AoE anymore. That has to go away. And maybe the biggest disappointment for me, especially for Red, is that Divine Hammer is very lackluster. I've been waiting for Divine Hammer to be addressed because it's been sitting there, dead talent, everybody ignoring it, the devs hoping that we would forget that it actually exists, which is a terrible game design, by the way. It's a talent, let me pick it. And now that they've kind of changed it so that it doesn't consume your, I think it was Holy Power, similar to Breath of Sindragosa, it can be maintained by spending Holy Power, I believe. That's how it works. But the damage is very pitiful. It looks amazing, man. It looks like, oh my god, like the old school spinny hammer things. It reminds me of Diablo 2 and even Diablo 3. And I wish it would do more damage. I wish they would make this as a capstone to make it like a part of Red Fantasy. But it's very mediocre, and that's so disappointing because it could be so much better. Then the blandness of Red kind of gets older and older the longer we go without any actual real changes. A lot of people like it. It's the most popular spec in the game, period, so I cannot really fault it too much. Subtlety is maybe the best rogue spec at the moment in terms of interacting with its tier set. I feel like it's the least impacted by the pitiful RNG, where you just kind of constantly lose your 2-set bonus again and again and again and again and again, which is weird and unfun. But with Shadow Dance proccing your winning streak at max stacks, I believe, and having high uptime on Shadow Dance is really helpful. It feels like you're buffing your damage windows even more, and Marcel has been playing more Rogue than I have, and it does quite a lot of damage. It's been really cool. I am hoping for a little bit more love on Subtlety's side. I am still missing a little bit the old Shadow Dust playstyles, which has been my favorite version of Subtlety, but it's not that bad this moment. We'll see how the tuning goes, because I feel like it needs a little bit of tuning. Unholy is kind of losing a little bit in the 11.1 in terms of tier sets. The tier set essentially affects your Epidemic and Death Coil the most, where you're going to be buffing those, and those same spells will take away those buffs, which is the Winning Streak. Now, Winning Streak gets activated and you cannot actually dispel your own Winning Streak during Dark Transformation. It's a little bit boring. It kind of makes no impact whatsoever on your gameplay rotation, with maybe the exception of some talents. Now, there's a good side to Unholy as well. Kind of like a bittersweet side, let's say. You'll most likely be pushed into Sand Lane. I don't think a lot of people are happy about that, because Rider of the Apocalypse is such a big winner when it comes to the mobility and the fluidness and just the flow of the spec in general. Sand Lane is rotationally maybe a little bit more interesting because Vampiric Strike is a big hitting ability. The thing is, you're not gonna wanna focus a lot on Vampiric Strike because your Death Coil will be buffed by Sandlane by quite a lot. And add this to the tier set and your, Sudden Doom talents and all of those Death Coil talents on your tree, you'll end up doing a lot of damage with Death Coil, which takes away some of the agency that Sandlane is supposed to give you on that Vampiric Strike, on that Scourge Strike playstyle. So it's a little bit weird. Plus side is that Death Coil ends up, for me at the moment, when I've tested on the PTR, it ended up doing almost 8 times more damage than Epidemic, which means obviously Epidemic is AoE, but that means that Epidemic would have to hit about 8 targets or more to be able to out DPS Death Coil. It's a little bit counterintuitive and it's a little bit sucky, but as long as it's just a season, that's fine, because what this actually enables is priority damage for Unholy in Mythic Plus, which is a big thing, and one of the reasons why a lot of specs are taken into Mythic Plus into high keys is because of their priority damage, where they can take funnel damage and shove it into one target, and it seems like that's what's going to happen with the current version of Unholy if Death Coil remains to be this strong. Of course, this will also mean possibly really good single target in raids, and that's always great because Unholy always feels like it's kind of falling off by the end of the season. So we'll see how it evolves. By the sheer fact that you might have damage profile variety, I will put Unholy into decently fun, but being forced into one particular playstyle with no variation might actually see it being bumped down a tier, but we don't know that yet. We'll have to keep our eyes open. Now, Windwalker is all the way up there because, dude, this spec is cooking in the next patch. I've been having a lot of fun. First of all, finally upgrades the animation, especially with the Shadow Pan Flurry Strikes. Dude, this sounds and looks so good. I've been really surprised when I saw them the first time. It's really sweet. Considering that the Monk hero talents are very, very passive, at least make them, crank, or at least crank visually, and that's really cool. And another thing that is very exciting for Windwalker is that now you have a new capstone, or I guess maybe you've had it for a while. I've missed it when they've added this, and that is Slicing Winds, the old Plunderstorm ability, which is still in Plunderstorm as of this video. And it's kind of what I was hoping Plunderstorm would do to spec, is just introduce new abilities and new combat interactions with spells for a lot of specs. And it works just as it does in Plunderstorm, where you charge it and you travel further. The damage is the same. It has been buffed recently because it was a little bit underwhelming. However, it still feels a little bit underwhelming because it doesn't really have any interactions with any other part of your kit. And this reminds me of the Whirling Dragon Punch, which has changed since then. So I'm hoping that this receives the same change, where Whirling Dragon Punch has some interactivity. It can proc Dance of GG, it can proc more Ancient Teachings. So I'm kind of hoping that Slicing Winds also has some interactions with your kit to feel like I'm building towards something, because it kind of breaks me away from the flow of Windwalker, which is so nice. And dude, melees are just really fun, but it's looking like it's probably not going to be a melee meta next year, and you're gonna struggle a little bit. And this is a good time to check the Marksmanship rework that we made a video about, because Marksmanship rework is the best Hunter rework, by the way, and one of the best reworks in WoW, period, where you're taking core mechanics of Marksmanship, and speaking of synergy, everything plays in a loop of synergies and connections, and it feels great. Just watch the video, and of course play some Marksmanship next patch.